So, what do you get when you cross a judge in Pretoria these days? Especially for a mother. You get jail time. That's what you're going to be discussing on this episode. Not sure if you guys have seen this article, but it's a breakthrough for fathers. So stay tuned. We're going to have quite the discussion about this today and try and figure out how we can get more of these outcomes. Welcome back, people. Great news for fathers. Not so good for mothers. How are you doing, Dolph?
I'm good yourself, Dominique.
Good. How are you feeling about the news that we've just heard of here about the court ruling in Pretoria?
Well, look, Dominique, if you follow the various social pages on social justice in relation to fathers' rights, you'll find that worldwide, statistically, a lot more fathers are effectively winning. Is a word I sort of use selectively, but at the end of the day, it's not the father that wins; it's the child that wins. So fathers are getting recognized for their
Right.
place in their children's lives. I think that's important to understand. There were two landmark judgments recently. One was in Cape Town, where a mother effectively got jailed on weekends for
Yes.
denying the right of the father to see the child. And one must not see this as the father winning, because that's an important thing, I think, to recognize. One must see this as the child winning here. And then, of course, the very recent one. So there was a November, December judgment somewhere in Cape Town and one in Pretoria. And the one in Pretoria is significant to me because Pretoria has a little bit of a old school view in relation to fathers' rights,
Right.
and the Cape Town one, I think I expected that one pretty much, purely because Cape Town and Johannesburg sort of on the same frequency. If you speak to family advocates and you speak to attorneys, Johannesburg is a different view. So Johannesburg and Cape Town, I think, are recognizing fathers' rights more, and courts are district based. That's the unfortunate part. And then for this Pretoria court to make this judgment, and we don't have the details of it, Dominique, and we spoke about this at some point, but we'll
Yeah.
get the details. The newspapers don't say much, neither does the website
Well,
of
good.
the
Good news on that one there, Dolph. I actually spoke to this attorney today. I'm hoping that she does come on the show and shares a little bit more
Awesome.
on the story. But I'm sure that the documents are going to be made public in the next coming weeks. Again, it's something
Right.
that they'll have to confirm. But am I right by saying that all documents are made public once the court case is closed?
I don't know. That's my understanding, Dominique. I mean,
The
I'm not an
outcome,
attorney.
the outcome of
I'm
that,
not an
yeah.
attorney. But I think the outcome is in principle, the judgment is in principle, and the judgment will then refer to certain documents. And
Right.
in the judgment, the reference to the document may not necessarily constitute the grim detail within the document or within the evidence. It will just reference the evidence at high
Right.
level if there are. So I think we'll get a good understanding of what happened there. And we spoke at length why the maternal grandmother also play the role, and where's the maternal grandfather and
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
happening there.
Well, we've
But
got
that's
our
another.
own analogies on that. We'll
Yes,
we'll
so
we'll
that's
share
a,
our
that's
thoughts, and hopefully people will come on and share their thoughts as well in the comments,
right.
or just come on to the show as well.
Sure.
So let's run through this article here quickly. Right. So it says the court rules that Pretoria mom and granny be jailed if they deny father access to his child. Right. Why should this happen in the first place? Why is this such a breakthrough headline for fathers? Some people that's new to this channel might not even understand why that means the world of a difference to a father. And well, children don't really know. As much as this is a win for the children, as you say, they don't know what's happening to them or around them.
Well, look, I can
Uh,
only speak from experience, Dominique.
yeah,
I can speak from experience in relation to my own son. And then, of course, I have a keen sense of plotting events, gathering data and then
right.
plotting data. I think from the time that I've spent in certainly looking at issues related to men and their children, men have and do often give up in the fight to see their kids. That's one aspect. They either get financially drained or completely just tired. We spoke at some point in relation to post-traumatic stress disorder that some fathers develop.
Yeah,
In
very
principle,
common.
alienation, yeah, in principle, statistically, alienation happens mostly from the mother's side. That's a sad fact, right? And it has a lot to do with how the law views the mother and also siding with the mother in principle, right? And I'm saying in principle, I don't think it's the law. I think it's the intentions, and I think it's just the view of the courts that naturally gives the mother complete access to the children. I think that's that really, and I would definitely welcome a discussion with attorneys that are well versed, and then statistically look at the prevalence of men getting access to their children off the bat. So, getting back to your question, I think just we used to men losing the fight, and I'm saying the word losing with reservedness. Men giving up, they need to put their lives together. They've completely lost everything in the process. And a lot of men put in a lot of effort and love into their relationships and marriages, and it hits them quite hard. And then there's socio-economic conditions that also impact on men negatively, and they just end up giving up. So this is, I think, a very positive point for men to, just keep the focus, do the right thing. Either you had someone on Phenomenal the other night representing himself and getting pretty much
Yeah, Derek.
getting pretty much the same outcome as a
Yes,
layman. But that said, there's definitely a focus towards the rights of fathers and the ability, importantly, of the children for the children
that's
to
right.
have access, equal access to their paternal to their
So it
fathers.
becomes it becomes more important now to know your rights, and these small wins. Many fathers don't know that these wins actually, uh, let's just call them wins for the sake of this episode. Um, as they were just overlooked. The father's rights, the children's rights to have a relationship with the father is just overlooked up until these cases actually come out. And I think, well, I'm looking forward to many more of these cases ruling in this regard to, to giving the fathers just the basic rights that, by the way, is already all right. It's already
Of-
that in the Children's Act. We just don't know it. This is what I'm learning as well as we go along. But let's
Right.
go on to just seeing here what it says. So it says the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria sentenced mother and grandmother to 30 days imprisonment suspended on the condition that they allow a father contact with his daughter. Now, here's a question that arises. How does the law define access to a minor child? What's your opinion in that respect?
Yes, yeah, and I had to go and Google this. I'm not well versed with the law. I'm not an attorney. I just, as a father, know certainly what through the process that I've walked, which included social workers, psychiatric assessments, and the like. In principle, I think the law allows for 50-50 consent, care, and maintenance. That's an important thing, first and
Yes.
foremost, right? You have the right to equal access to your child, and your child has the right to equal access to the parent, given that the parent is a sensible parent and in a position to care for and maintain his child. That's the father, of course.
Right.
That I must also say, the opposite side of the coin is true too. Very often, mothers don't pay if the father gets full access to the child, or the child is put in the care of the father. Often, mothers don't end up paying anything in
Well, that
relation to
really
support.
happens in its on its own. In any case,
True,
I don't think
true.
I've heard
And I
many.
wanted to comment, Dominique. I wanted to comment. If you look at legislation, case law in Europe, the UK specifically, and a lot of our law comes from the United Kingdom, or England, as
Yeah.
we fondly know it. Um, because of the World Health Organization and its recognition of parental alienation, there's a lot of arguments and changes in law that actually identifies the symptoms of it, and very importantly, identifies the future impact on the child. Because it's not
Right.
about the parents, that's the reality. It's not about the parents, it's about the children. So yeah, to get back, I think we this is not so much a landmark decision internationally. It definitely sets the bar in South Africa, and equal access, in my opinion, would constitute 50-50 care, consent, and maintenance. In other words, if your child goes to a doctor, you should be known in the fact. The mother should call you and say, "Listen, I had to take him to the doctor. He's got COVID symptoms," or "I had to have a tooth pulled. There's a problem there." So that's parents acting in the interest of the child, so that when the father next have an engagement with that child, the engagement could be set around recent activities in that child's life. That's just sensible, right?
Right.
So that's just one way parents who suffer from malicious parent syndrome, which leads to parental alienation, operate. So, but in fairness,
Explain
if you look
malicious parent syndrome there quickly. What do you
again,
know
I'm
about that?
not as well. Look, when you go and look at parental alienation, when you go and look at psychiatric deficiencies in people, and I can only again speak from my own experience with diagnosis and everything that's taken place, and looking at the life cycle of all of the events. And the malicious parent syndrome is effectively a view a parent takes in, I can only think of the word gunning for another parent, but trying to utilize the child in layman's terms to become a weapon,
Right.
because you only are a parent by definition if you have a child, right? Whether it's
Right.
biological or not. And then being malicious, we know what that is, right? So
Yeah.
in layman's terms, I would define it as a parent who utilizes the child as a weapon against the other parent. That's really a malicious parent, in short, for me. And it may lead to parental alienation. I mean, there
And
are various.
malicious in the sense that they want to destroy the other parent at any
Right,
cost, even if
right.
it means
But at,
using that
at
child.
any cost, that's important. At any cost, that's a very important thing to state, because
Right.
an alienating parent falls into several categories, and I had a guy by the name of Douglas Darnell, who effectively has got a PhD in the children's psychiatric environment. But it's important to note um, that there are alienators out there, male and female, that don't even know that their actions alienate the child. And that's where I would subcategorize the impact of malicious parent syndrome in the care and consent of children, and sometimes the maintenance side. But effectively, you get a parent that wants to be malicious to another parent, right? In the way they live themselves out and withhold contact. But in the process, they end up completely disregarding the fact or not acknowledging the fact that they, are implementing parental alienation. And it's a syndrome. The child suffers it, not the parent. The child suffers the syndrome. And the syndrome
Right.
has significant impacts on the life of the child when that child grows. On the other side of 13, my research certainly shows that that's where the impact really is. On the other side of 13 years of age, in boys, because I have a boy, and younger in girls. So yes, to answer you there, malicious parent syndrome. My consideration and research certainly shows that that leads to parental alienation, and sometimes unbeknown to the alienating parent.
Okay. So, next question here. It says here in this article that this father was actually alienated for 3 years. Okay. How long? Because I hear this quite commonly. I was told this also by a mediator. Dominic, do you know that there are other fathers who have not seen their children for 3 years? Meaning that I am being too hasty, I'm being impatient because I haven't seen my child for 3 months. Look, 3 weeks is too long already for me. I had to accept every second week, and now I'm not seeing my child for 3 months. Um, let's reverse that and then see how the mother deals with that situation. Right. So the question being, how long do you have to be denied access before you are considered to be alienated? In fact,
Well, look, yeah, again, I think you and I are not experts. We rely heavily on
well,
experts,
that's
and often,
subjective now. Actually, now,
right, right. So
yeah.
often we
I
get
do feel like I'm an
experts.
expert because I've gone through this myself. So
Right, and you should, because you've dealt with it, and that's one of the aspects of the show, right? We get to share
yeah,
our experiences with other people, and then we have offline groups where we effectively support one another, and I think that's an
yeah.
important cause as well. But the simple answer for me is, um, as adults, we can sustain a lot, carry a big burden, and yes, we simply don't want to not have contact with our kids because we love them.
Just want to give a shout out to the guys that's coming on. Sorry, the Dolph.
Sure.
Sorry to break your word. Hi, Chantel. Just want to give people acknowledgement there. We see you. We see you. Thanks for joining. Kay Peterson. Thanks for joining. Sorry, Dolph, you were saying?
Yeah. So this is the short answer to the question: how long should someone be alienated? How long should contact be denied? How long should you fight for contact with your child? Regular social interaction, whether it's physical or simple on the phone. Remember one thing, Dominique, and I think everyone's experienced this. For us adults that can manage our mindsets in relation to the heartache that this brings. Um, it could, from a court's perspective, take any amount of time. We know that the process churns slowly. But let's think for a second about the children, right? For them, if it takes 2 years, right? It's been a year in December that I got the message, Merry Christmas, I'm relocating.
Right.
And in that process, I had to first see my child under supervision, and then move on to more irregular visits, and then move on to more regular visits. And now I'm on every second weekend, but only telephonic conversations twice a week, and it's ridiculous. But for those kids, right, even not speaking to one of their parents for more than a day is a problem, because their view of timelines is skewed different to ours, right?
Right.
And they too have needs. And that's what I always say. I thank God for the Voice of the Child toolkit. It's something that effectively gives the children a voice, even if they don't even know it. And that's, I think, a
Your
discussion.
son's recently gone through that, right? Would you say that it's helpful? Because I've heard I've heard something else from another parent. I can't name names now, but
Yes.
they completely against the Voice of the Child. Apparently, they feel that it should be scrapped completely.
Okay. So
Um,
I,
bec-
I have no
from the
professional.
perspective that the child shouldn't be asked these questions, they
Right.
shouldn't have to go through it.
Look,
But then, what's your
what I
take on that?
understand, yes. So what I understand of the Voice of the Child toolkit, right? And I
Yeah,
suppose it will hedge heavily on your experience with people applying that toolkit. It's not the child that applies it, it's a grown
yes,
up, right? That
yes,
understands the toolkit from their perspective, have
right.
undergone again very little training. I think it's a week or something like that. And then they apply this toolkit. So I've had two positive experiences with it. One was with an appointed one of these social workers, appointed professional social worker,
Right,
charged me around 5,000 Rand a session. And then they ended up with 10, 12, 15 sessions of applying the Voice of the Child toolkit to the child. And then there's an outcome, a big, thick 250-page report that's written on your social interaction, the mother's social interaction, the child's social circumstances, and this toolkit enables quite an insightful view of the
right.
child. So that was the one experience. The second experience was I was lucky to get a court-appointed attorney for my child to look after my child's best interests.
And
The attorney
what's
made
the
it.
process to get what's the process to get that done? Just
Look,
in short,
there was a specific instance where I felt I had to approach the court
right,
in relation to the safety and sustainable oversight management of my son. And there was a long iteration in relation to how it came to be, but the court appointed an attorney. The attorney, and that's something I learned from the whole process, is a legal aid attorney, right? And legal aid, or all attorneys, it doesn't feel that way when you're on the receiving end from your ex-wife or your wife's attorney. But
yeah,
all attorneys are appointed to act in the best interest of the children. All of them are.
right.
None of them
Just a code of
really are.
ethics, I guess.
Right. None of them. Well, I think I don't think. I think it goes beyond the code of ethics in principle. But
Right,
again, I'm not a legal expert. But I really feel when you're on the receiving end, remember, attorneys have to act in their client's interest, right? And I think
right.
sometimes on the balancing scale, when the client also has a child, the client's interest sort of almost trumps the interest of the child, because the client's interest, when they drive aspects outside of the child's interest, the attorney sort of almost goes along with it, whether they want to or not, because someone's got to pay the bills. That's just
Yeah,
my view on it. But I was lucky. The court appointed. I filled in a form too, I think, at the children's court. There was a bit of interaction between myself, the magistrate, and the attorney on the day in relation to whether a high court matter can be heard in the children's court. After some phone calls, they've established that the children's court actually takes precedence over the high court matter because the rights of the child takes precedence over the rights of the parents, which we know.
Right.
So I was
Yes.
really fortunate in having an attorney appointed for my son. And the attorney told myself and the mother that he does not care. He used some tough words to hear or to listen to, but he said he
Right.
doesn't care about. I don't care about your rights, and I don't care about the rights of the mother. I only care about the interest of the child, which is exactly what
What you
parents
wanted.
should want. Not
Right.
me, not
Yeah.
me. Parents should want
Yeah.
that and only that, right?
Right.
So
But I mean, in
he
your case, that's what you wanted. You wanted your son's interest to be protected, his
Well,
rights to be protected.
not everyone, look. There's an aspect of it, yes, and then there's the ego side of it, right? And you got
Right.
to be in a position to put ego away completely,
Yeah.
and look after what that boy wants or girl wants or needs,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Now, I am no psychologist, so I cannot determine it, but it was predetermined using the voice of the child, and it was
Right.
put in a very thick report. So it was contested in principle because the rights was completely ignored by the attorneys and the opposing party, if you will. And it was redone now recently by the court appointed attorney who was also trained in using the voice of the child toolkit. And it's a very specific toolkit that gets the child to say certain things that's aligned to what the child wants and needs in a specific scenario. And that's
Right.
all I know about it. That's all I know. I think if I had had a negative experience with it, because I've had two relatively positive experiences with the Voice of the Child toolkit, and I think I can only, talk positively about it.
But it's like you
But
said, it depends on who's actually applying it, right?
well, I'm thinking that's because if I read the information around it and the psychology behind it, it is flawless from my perspective, right?
Right.
And you have to look at it from the principle that you will acknowledge the fact that you are failing in some areas of your child's life, because we
Right.
all do, don't we? So you have to look at
Absolutely.
it from that perspective, realistically, and that there is a great possibility that you are failing your child somewhere. And you have to acknowledge those facts. So if you're in that position, I think you'll have a positive view on the voice of the child because it means that you may have an outcome that doesn't suit you. And that is not the end of the line. It means that now you're in a position to understand the weakness. It's like a little SWOT analysis, and then
Right.
go and do corrective measures. Because at the end of the day, again, it goes it, it, it's about the child and what can you do to be better. The win is, of course, if you have both parents that have that view. If it's only one parent that holds that view, it's one parent that grows, and it's one parent that actually ends up adding value to the child's life. But I think it's a good thing. I don't think there are many practitioners in this country that
Yeah.
actually apply it correctly. I think it's important to understand that when you engage with a practitioner,
Well, I
you
guess
have,
any superpower can be used for either good or evil. It depends on the person applying
well,
it.
remember we had a discussion not too long ago what constitutes a
Yeah.
mediator, and it's someone with 40 hours of training, and
Nah.
suddenly you're in a position to make to make very, very lasting
Crucial.
impacts on
Yeah.
people's lives. Yes.
So, on that note, with the voice of the child, right? Uh, how long should the child be denied access to the father?
Well, from a father's perspective, not a single day, right? But is the
Right.
father's perspective the right perspective? If the father is a sensible father and the outcomes of assessments effectively says, well, you're sensible in relation to how you approach things, you have a good psychiatric outcome in reporting, because that's just the process that I followed. I'm not saying everyone should follow that process, but The child is assessed, the father is assessed, the mother is assessed, and there's absolutely no reason for denying access. I think one day of not having access to your child is a very bad thing for the child, because I don't think their interpretation of time is they view time differently than what we do. So
And
as much
it's a
as
child's natural instinct to want to have a relationship with both parents. That
absolutely, that's my experience certainly. That's in fact a psychological outcome of all of the voice of the child that was applied, as well as in principle a general psychiatric view of the makeup of a child that grew up in a happy home,
yes,
relatively happy home, and then suddenly had to experience separation and drastic changes to their lives. My son still refers to the house we stayed in and wanting to stay in such a home once again. And
right,
I think it's just a way of him saying, because he references the house, the physical house. He references that, but I think it's his way in saying that he wants the setup the same: a loving mother, a loving father, and having access to both of them at the same time with play and engagement and this, that, and the other. That's just my view.
right.
But not a single day, Dominique, should a father be denied access because of the child. Not a single day should a mother be denied access because of the child and their interpretation of time.
So it goes on to saying here in the article on Tuesday, High Court Judge Munzelele, I hope I said that right, ruled that the mother and the maternal grandmother of the child were in contempt of court by denying and frustrating our client's parental rights to exercise contact to his minor child, according to Ulrich Rue and Associates. Now, I had this question: what is contempt of court? A father asked me now the other day, and that's just, well, uh, contravening or going against, breaking the court order. A court order is, and this was a high court order in this case, that the mother and the grandmother has gone against. So, what else can we say on contempt of court? What actually constitutes contempt?
Well, look, I can only again speak of my own experience.
Experience, yeah.
Yes, so in oftentimes the family advocate's office gets involved, right?
Yeah,
The family advocate then brings out a recommendation, and that's an important thing to understand here, because
right,
people refer to the family advocate's report, but it's not a report; it's a recommendation. Those recommendations stand under law, um, open to scrutiny, right?
yes,
Sensible scrutiny, of course. You can't make
right,
wild claims, this, that, and the other. But they very often rely on specialist reports, because that's the way I aligned the life cycle of what happened in my case. So there was a specialist report. They often then read this 250-page specialist report, I was hoping, and then come up with recommendations. Then, importantly, those recommendations need to be cemented by a court order, which effectively then finds its way into a parenting plan. And that's important to understand, right?
right,
So the parenting plan becomes the court order, and the court order reflects the recommendation from the family advocate's report, and then says you got 30 days after the divorce to come up with a parenting plan, and both parties have to set up, and then there's a structure for a parenting plan. But that's in effect the court order. Any left or right from that
yeah.
constitutes a contempt of court.
Right. So the rules are set out clearly there, and if you don't follow them, you're in contempt.
Right.
In
So
this case,
the mother probably had a court order. Oftentimes, people approach the family advocate and they end up getting the recommendation. The recommendation becomes set in stone in the divorcing court, whether it's the High Court or Magistrates Court, because I believe they do divorces nowadays as well. But when it's set out there, when you if you have a 5 to 6 Monday through to Friday call time for your child and you phone at 7 o'clock, you know, you're in contempt of court. I mean, it
Right.
starts off with the parent where the child lives saying, "Listen, you have." You're late or this bath time or it's homework time or whatever the case may be. But they can realistically go to court and charge you with harassment because you're phoning outside of your times. So, and they do that. They do that.
Petty,
They charge you with
petty, petty,
harassment.
petty.
Yeah, they charge you with harassment and contempt of court.
Right.
It's silly. That's where the
Lisa
malicious
Marie,
parent syndrome comes in.
Lisa Marie has a very good question. Yeah. She says, I know you're talking about alienation, but is it fair towards a child being denied access on demand? Example, a child wants to spend more time with the other parent, but one denies the access.
Yeah, I'm not following there. Who denies the access? The parent the child wants to spend more time with, but that parent denies the access.
Uh, I, I think, I think that what you're saying here is um, the child wants to spend more time with the other parent, with the alienated parent,
Okay.
but being denied access.
Yeah. Look, I
Well,
think
it says, but
perhaps parental alienation in this context is not um, is not the problem here. I think let's look at my scenario, right? So the other parent, the mother, says your son wants to spend more time with you. And I say, he can't. I'm not at home this weekend, or I'm busy in the week, or I can't phone him when he wants to talk to me. I think that's how I understand that. And perhaps she could clear up for us.
yeah,
And again, I suppose it's the parent then. It's all about the kid's rights. That's what it's about, right?
yeah,
So if the mother, in my case, again, if I have to use an example, then feels that the child really needs to spend more time with me, if that's her ardent desire, she can equally, or we often forget about this side of the coin, right? She can also approach the court to force me to spend more time with a child. But that never happens. I
yeah.
bet you,
I would
statistically,
love to. I would love to be forced
statistically
to spend more time with my child.
Yeah, exactly. But I bet you, right? You can do a psychiatric assessment on that child. The child will have ardently, through the voice of the child and a psychiatrist, express the very heartfelt need to spend more time with the other parent. You can go to court, and the court can compel you to not work as many weekends or whatever the case may be. But I will bet my bottom dollar that probably has never happened. So that's the way I view that question. I think if I have to put the spin on it, that in principle is generally part of what alienated parents experience. Um, the child would effectively, I would demand spending more time with my child, um, and the mother would, in principle, deny it and say, well, the child would ask. I would ask on the back of the child's requests, and often, as I have experienced, the child expresses the need to the mother in front of me, and it is denied on the spot.
My
And
answer in short to this one, Liz Marie, is just answering the first part of your question. Is it fair towards a child being denied access on demand? And the answer to that is no. If my child tells me she's living with me permanently, and she says, you know what, I miss my mother so much. Can't I go and spend this week? I mean, why would I want to say no to the child, as long as things are not being interrupted in terms of schooling and so forth. But I mean, it should be at your discretion. uh, Again, it boils down to the parent. What would what would make a parent deny access in the first place? A normal person does not deny access. um Parents, I know there's a lot of parents that would love free time. You want to go to your father, the suck and puck. They saw me pack the bags quickly there for you. Yes, phone the father, and there you go. You know it's a holiday for them. But when there's this enmeshment, and I don't want to speak too much about pathological enmeshment, but there's parents who are so dependent on their child for validation, for feelings, their own emotion, that if that child is not there, they feel lost. And that's an unhealthy parent, in my opinion. If you can't live without your child being there all the time, then yeah, we've got problems there.
Dominique, I just want
Yeah,
to stop you there for a second in
yeah,
considering something. So, when you are a father that fights for equal access, 50-50, contact care, and maintenance, right?
yeah.
You often get accused of exactly that. They accuse you of that because it's the pathology of an alienator in principle, right?
Right.
They say you can't live without your child. Um, what's the term? I'm thinking now, I'm trying to look and think of multiple statements that were made in attorneys' letters towards me in relation to this. But what I was trying to do, because I moved to another town so that I can be closer to my son in
Right.
a period of his development between age 6 and 7, which is crucial for a boy to have a father figure. Um, and and this is what you get told, that you can't live without, you need validation, and this, that, and the other. So we have to be careful, and I spoke to you about it, and perhaps there's a discussion during the course of this week also in relation to what attorneys use. Say they sometimes they play both sides of the coin, because
Right.
they try and look after the best interest of the children, and of
Best
course
interest of their pockets, if you ask
that's
both
what I
of
was
them.
going to go to, the
Yeah,
paying
let's
parent,
let's just
someone
let's just go.
who covers the bills. So, because in on a website of an attorney, you read, two chapters of an attorney looking after the interest of the father and the child, and then in the last segment, it's completely aligned to the actual opposite on the website, which confuses me because it just shows the ability of the attorney to swap into a level of bias at any point in time,
Yeah,
completely disregarding what's good for the child. So I just wanted to say, look, as much as you say that, as much as you say that, and it's true, many parents cannot live without the children in their lives, and it's often and sad to say, I don't have the statistics, but from certainly from what I've looked at, the men I have engaged with, and women I've engaged with, some women acknowledging the fact that that's how they operated for years with their children, and it's sad to know that they only end up admitting that once the child has decided to leave their homes and go and stay with the father. I mean, those statistics are staggering as well, where children get alienated from their fathers and end up at age 13, 14, saying no to the mother and going to live with the father indefinitely. I know a father, the
right.
son hasn't spoken to his mother for 4 years. She lives up the road. She comes and stands in front of the gate. It's sad, man. And the
Yeah.
sadness behind it is the psychology in the child's mind, the impact that behavior had on the child. That's the sad
It's
part.
black and white. There's no in between now anymore with them. It's either you on mother's side or you on father's side, and
Right.
that is the fault of the alienating parent. I don't think if my daughter was to want to stay with me, I would always encourage, for her sake, a relationship with the mother.
It's not just encourage, Dominic. You have to impose it.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
impose it,
Impose. Yeah.
Dominic. You have
If
to
you if
impose it.
you are if you are under the age of 18, you don't have a choice. You're going to your mother.
If that child in the psychology, that's my take on it, right? If the
Yes.
psychology of that child, or if the mother is impaired in such a way that she cannot sensibly look after the best interests of that child emotionally, physically, then that's a different conversation there, right?
Right.
But if my son had to come and live with me now, he's only 7 years old, and he tells me, and it changed. It used to be different, and it changed because I learned and grew. But if he had to tell me today that he doesn't want to see his mother, I would smack his bum, man. You know,
Right.
after a harsh talk and the talk didn't
Yeah.
work. I would go
Yeah.
through the same punitive route that I would if he had done something at home
If you
that I don't agree with.
burn down the shed there or
Gee,
whatever
man,
in the
no.
in the
I
yard.
was I
Yeah.
was more thinking along the lines of playing a game of cricket in the house or playing tennis against the
Okay.
wall in the
Sorry.
living room. I would tell him, "Don't do this. Don't play with a ball in the house." And
Right.
then he would hit the
Breaks a
vase. The vase
window.
would fall, and I would
There
say,
we
"Well,
go.
this is it."
Right.
So he'd go. No, he doesn't
Yeah.
want to go to his mother. He doesn't want to talk to his mother. He doesn't want to see his mother. And I would say to him, this won't happen on our watch.
Right.
This is your responsibility as a
As a
boy for
child.
this mother, and this is my responsibility as a man and a father towards you. You have to
Absolutely.
engage with your mother, whether you want to or not. You think you don't want to, but your psychology, and that's what would be what's playing in my mind. Your psychology needs it. Finished.
Yeah.
If you have a
You
sensible
you
mother,
don't know you
you
don't know what's best for you. I know what's best for you. Until
right.
you're 18, until you have your own house,
Yes.
then
Well,
yeah.
18 may be
Then
stretching it. I mean, there's psychology out there that
no, but I
indicates
mean
that.
that's
I'm
that's
with
that's
you.
what that's what that's what the Children's Act says. Is it
That's what the
not?
Children's Act says, right? But the Children's Act, I think, is also has to consider that there are children out there that
Wat hulle
progresses
groot
slower
hou.
than others, slower than
Wow.
others, right?
Yeah.
I know that there are children out there. I've got a friend whose boy, 12, I think, 12 or 13, is making
Yeah.
it extraordinarily difficult for the mother, to the point where he semi-assaulted the mother recently. And by assault, I mean, how can a 13-year-old boy? He didn't hit his mother with a fist. He, out of frustration, he ran towards his mother. He's a young rugby playing boy, and he
Wat het
ran
tackle
and
her.
he shoulder charged the mother,
Oh,
and the mother got injured as a result. Right.
shit.
So you have to look at the behavior. The intent of the behavior
Right.
is frustration, and whether it culminates in a physical punch or a slap or shoulder charging in frustration, it's acting out an emotion, right?
That's right.
That's what you have to look at. And again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a father who's seen this. So I'm listening to
Yeah.
this friend telling me this, and luckily for
There's
him and
reasons for everything at the end of the day.
right, luckily for him and the mother, they came to a conclusion that the boy should move in with the father. The problem here is the boy also has a sibling, a younger sibling. So now the sibling is separate, they're separated, but they live in the
Right.
same small town. So they'll get to see each other at school and get to see each other, but that's not ideal. So one
Right.
has to look at and manage the psychology there. And this was at age 13. This boy took it upon himself to make a decision, right? And the
Right.
decision wasn't the right decision. You should never act out in life. But
Should
children,
don't shoulder charge your mother ever.
right, he shoulder charged the mother in the stomach, winded her, and of course injured her to some extent. But the injury and that's not the point of discussion. The point of discussion is this child acted out in the same anger as you would find someone pulling a gun and pulling a trigger. You know
Right.
that anger, that rage, that uh, and one has to look at the psychology and what it holds for the future of this human, the soul, right? If you
Right.
allow it now, and if you don't, because my advice to him was and would always be to such a parent, is you have to have intensive play therapy with that child so you can manage. You now know that this child acts in rage. He's only 13. When he has
Right.
access to other tools that may negatively impact someone else as a result of rage, he may utilize those tools, guns,
Right.
cars, whatever.
Samurai
So
swords, all of that. We've seen it.
right, right. So
um,
manage it now. Manage it
I
now.
just
But yes, that's
I just want
that's
to
our
get
discussion.
back to the article here quickly, Dolph. And all of these things that you mentioned, you know, I think at this point for this week, we actually gonna dive deep into educating ourselves and educating fathers as to their rights, but more importantly, as we've discussed, your children's rights to have a relationship with you. When you come with the angle of you doing this in the best interest of your child will be able to cope better with a father in his or her life or their lives. You get what I'm saying? It's about removing yourself, your own hurt, your own emotions, your own pain. But how is that child going? If they can eliminate you and and guarantee you that your child will have a better life without you, then maybe it is in their best interest. But then they must prove that.
I actually said to an attorney, um, the appointed attorney we spoke about earlier, I said to this attorney because he took an inordinately long time to start engaging the situation. And it's workload, this, that, and the other. I mean, I have grace for that. But at the end of the day, we still have a 7 year old that's suffering the effects of what I perceive to be certainly, as a minimum, malicious parent syndrome. And that's my perception. There's no formal nothing. It's just what I see and what I've
Right.
experienced and talking to other fathers. And also having at some point contemplating the same sort of approach, right? And
Right.
in principle, also overstepped some boundaries that I have. There's this phenomenal professor in psychology that I did this parenting course with. And the things we say to our children astounds me in how they perceive it and what they do with that information. It's fascinating. But I really think that we have to, delving into the issue, Dominic, looking at children suffering. I told this attorney that even if you have to take me out of my son's life,
Right.
do something about the situation now. I beg you. And when I wrote that, I wrote it on a WhatsApp um, to the attorney. Got his number outside of the Popiac, I think. And I wrote it, I said, listen, and I wrote it in an email saying, even if you have to remove me. So when I read it back to myself, I thought, what did you just do? What did you just do?
Right.
But
But
it's an
that's the
ardent,
desperation that you're at.
it's not my desperation.
Yes.
I'm,
It's your
I'm,
desperation to do what's best for your child. You don't know
well,
anymore.
yes, but that's I think, a difficult thing to word. And I'm listening to you doing it now, and I'm thinking, yes, man,
Dolph,
I
Dolph,
often put myself, yes, I
sorry,
put
I don't want to
myself in my
break your
boy's
word there.
shoes.
I just wanna give
Yeah,
the viewers also some acknowledgement here quickly.
I Brian.
Muhammad Arshad Khan says he hasn't seen his children for 3 years. Children's been brainwashed, as all alienated parents have experienced. She's cancelled my papers and banned me to come back to SA. Mohammed, tell me where. Just type in the chat. Where are you at the moment? Um, so that we
Yeah, you
understand your
see,
situation.
yeah,
And yeah,
if
the
I
different countries are have different
that's
laws,
the
so we just need
problem.
to know.
That's the
Yeah.
problem. And you know what? I have experienced this speaking to
and
many fathers,
and
especially.
I just want to give Nudi. Sorry, this is a guy that I've been following. I'll share his video during the week. We probably won't have enough time today, but I just want to give him acknowledgement. I've been waiting for this guy to come on. He's an artist from Cape Town, and he had a very emotional video there. He said he's heart full of having to fight like this, jump over gates to be in his child's life, but he was very vocal about it. So I can't wait for him to come onto the show. Dankie Nuri, I see you, brother. Welcome. I'm glad you finally tuned in. Right, please do speak to a lawyer about legal advice, but then also watch the episodes here on the show. We did have a lawyer on here, so you'll be able to get quite a bit. And also, before just spending money on lawyers, educate yourself. This week is going to be all about that. We're gonna be unpacking the Children's Act and what fathers can use to just strengthen their cases, right?
Well, I mean,
So
we had a
just waiting,
we had a
just
father
waiting for
on,
Mohammed to say
Dominique.
where he's from.
We had a father on just the other day that's, you know, down and out financially, like many of the fathers end up being. And then, you know, out of complete desperation, seeking to represent themselves. And he was acknowledged by the court, and he won his case. The merits and the circumstances I'm not well versed with, but it's doable. And I'm not advocating to go to court yourselves. I have certainly found that representing myself adds to a lot of emotion, a lot of trauma. There was a point where I didn't want to open my emails at all, my Gmail account. I didn't want to open it because attorneys know this too. They know you can't deal with the stresses of life and be
That's it.
trying to be an attorney. They know it. So they would at some point bombard you, and then they also take advantage of circumstances like Christmas, around your birthday, around your child's birthday. They would take advantage of the emotional aspects associated with those specific times, and then they would bombard you with letters, making all sorts of allegations and claims about you or about the situation that effectively just serves to destroy you emotionally, and make you seem less competent. And competency I use with a lot of reservation there, but they utilize this. So I wouldn't recommend someone representing themselves unless they really have a strong view of the purpose they have put themselves in. But he's in Pakistan, I see. He's
That's yeah.
lost
That's Mohammed.
yeah 24,000 rand on tickets. Brother, I'm a quarter of a million rand in on attorney's fees, right? So and again, I'm not making your situation seem different, but 24,000 rand, you just sort of on the bottom end of getting the process going. It's always difficult, Dominique, when you are not a South African citizen. And then there's also the aspect of fathers who are not married. Those fathers also have a much harder fight. Remember, you're the biological father, but the law views you different because of your non-association, legal non-association to the child. And oftentimes those children get registered with the mother's surname, not the father's. And it also impacts severely on your rights until those rights are acknowledged. Then only do you get to step into the rights as a father. Once there's clarity on the fact that you are the biological father of that child. Yes, the child has a different surname to you, but this is the reasoning why you weren't there, maybe, Mohammed, for the registration of your child. And these things make it difficult, and you're not a citizen of the country. So, for instance, you won't necessarily have access to legal aid. because you're not a tax-paying citizen. They would deny
Yeah.
you legal aid. So there are all sorts of complexities that come with being an expatriate or someone who lives outside of South Africa who may have come here on a work visa or whatever the case may be and fathered a child with a woman. But that
So
doesn't make your
yeah,
responsibility as a father less. Yes.
here's another point he's making. I mean, this has happened to almost all alienated fathers. Is that the extended family is being alienated? I mean, he says his mother's not so well, and she keeps asking when she's going to get to talk to her grandchildren.
Yeah, the problem is with this, and it touches. We spoke about this at some point with relation to the court case that started this discussion, Dominique. You know, why
Yeah,
is there a grandmother involved? I mean, the law recognizes the maternal grandparents, right? But not as decision makers. They're not decision makers
right.
unless the courts appoint them as decision makers, right? So it's simple for me. My son doesn't have grandparents on my side, and perhaps that's why it's easier. But I don't ever want to have the maternal grandparents play a decision making role, right? And it's because of the emotion associated with it. You know,
Right.
I've had the grandparents stand at the gate shouting at me in front of the boy. I've had that. It's happened. And the
Right.
trauma and the impact it has on that child is
And
significant. And
the lack of respect. I mean, eventually is that's going to be how he treats you, and that drives a wedge in your relationship with him.
yes, well, look, what I'm trying to point to is as much as if I had a mother, my mother would want to see the grandchild, my
Right.
child. I think one is better poised to take that side of emotion out of the equation completely for your
Right.
sake. And with no disrespect to your own mother, and with no disrespect to the family members, at that point in time, it's only about the child. And yes, the child would want to know the grandmother and have a relationship there. But if you don't have the basics fixed first, in other words, your relationship with your child, the access to your child, if you don't have that fixed, your relationship,
Yeah.
your access as a father or as a mother, if you don't have that fixed, you cannot be expected to concentrate on the access and the relationship your mother has with your son or her grandchild. I think that's a basic fundamental that I would simply also talk to someone because the emotion associated with it, you are burdening or carrying your own mother's emotion in you, and
And
it
your
makes
own,
your yes,
and your
of
child's.
course, and your own because your mother is being denied access, right? But what it does, in principle, is it not eliminates, but it hampers your decision making because now you're
Yes,
bringing additional external stakeholders to the equation, but you haven't got your own relationship fixed first with
that's
your
right.
child,
So all
and
it
then
does is
build
it
it out.
breaks you down emotionally,
I
and
think
as
so.
Dolph said,
It's it
you
right.
end
It's
up
not.
making the wrong decisions.
I think so, Dominique. I certainly I've
Now, I can
certainly
agree
have
with that.
seen it. Yes, I certainly have seen it, and I've spoken to other men, and I've listened to men where men typically have issues with the mother-in-law. It's a
Yeah,
tongue-in-cheek analogy, right? My mom, my mother-in-law makes things difficult, and this, that, and the other. But once they get involved, the it just adds to emotion,
yeah.
because now who are they? That's what the man asks. Who are they to also,
So
and you should ask the
on
same to
that
your mother.
note, on that note, Dolph, Mohammed, we can, if you'd like, after the show, you can message us, and we can chat a bit from there, just on how we've managed to deal with these same situations, because every father who is alienated goes through exactly what you're going through, but we've managed to strengthen each other through our own stories, through our own experiences. So if you'd like to. Um, just message the page and we'll definitely answer you on that. There's one question here that relates to back to this article here. So it says here the attorneys said warrants of arrest will be issued immediately in the event that the mother and the maternal grandmother of the 7-year-old girl continue with their unlawful and inhumane conduct. Inhumane, unlawful and inhumane being very powerful words used here, because I mean it is a human right for the child to have, access to both parents, to the father. So again, the question here: should a mother and grandmother go to jail? Because this is something that weighed heavily upon me as well. There was at one point where I wanted to go further with the matter, and I've been told I can actually get the mother locked up. But it came to that: do you really want the mother of your child locked up and all of that? But then also, I'm still sitting in a position where my child is now being totally alienated from me. So what where do we draw the line here? Dolph, no sound. Can't hear you. All right, Dolph's just fixing his. So type in the chat, guys. What do you think? Should a woman, should a grandmother and a mother be locked up? And well, it's already happening, so there's no choice really. I still don't get you. Oh, you've been muted there. Let's just unmute yourself there, Dolph.
Yeah, apologies for that.
No stress.
I disconnected my monitor and the settings effectively just threw
Okay,
me out.
no stress. We've got a couple of comments that came in here.
Yeah.
So every time I call on the birthday, no answer. 1,500. I have a load. 1,500 rupees to call. It just gets wasted. Yeah. Mohammed, the best thing I can tell you is come on the show and we'll give you the platform to speak about. We've all gone through this, and Dolph himself has come on to the show. The very first episode, he spoke about his experiences through this. So that's the best I can offer for you right now, bro. If you'd like to tell your story, just type story in the chat and answer the couple of questions in the chat bot. You'll book a time, and then you can come on the show. We'll figure this out together. That's about the best that we can do. Kay Peterson says this is okay. So this is Elroy Peterson, and Elroy Peterson says, yes, this is what's happening to me. The mother and grandmother are turning my 7-year-old daughter against me. I have no contact because of them. Right. Here's the thing, Elroy. Things are changing according to this that has just happened. So if you've just joined us and you don't know, just last week on the 28th of January, this post has gone out. When was that? Just a couple of days ago. Yep, 3 days ago. So a mother and grandmother has been sentenced. So this should give you hope. All right, that's all I can say, Elroy, is this should give you hope, because this sets precedents for future cases. All right, you can actually use this as an example. If your case is exactly the same as this, then there should be no reason in court when you do take it to court. Right. If you have, please type in the comments as well if you've got any court orders in place, because that makes the process a lot easier for you as well.
Of course. And I want to just comment on it as well,
yes,
Dominique.
Yes.
The last portion there, the attorney says, just bring that up again. Yes, the attorney says there'll be a warrant of arrest issued immediately. And that's a court process. But because of the in all probability, because of the judgment, there'll be, the attorneys would have the ability to issue the judgment to the local police station and then have a warrant on the back of the judgment be issued if the court order is broken again, right? But what what I'm getting at is the unlawful and inhumane conduct in parentheses, which effectively the only thing I can deduce from that is that was one of the arguments in principle, that the conduct is unlawful
Yes.
and
And
inhumane.
inhumane.
Yes, so that's fundamental to the judgment.
That's right.
It's probably because it's quoted in that way. It's probably in the judgment too. One would have legal arguments around some of the principles in the actual case and why the conclusion used these two words. But if you look at just the rights of the child as a South African citizen under our constitution, you'd probably already deduce that some of it's unlawful because there was a judgment of sorts, and inhumane, it's not aligned to the rights of the child and or the father in principle. And I think that would be the two arguments. I can't wait to read the actual judgment
Yes.
and to delve into the case a little bit. I think that's what's going to be important in the next couple of weeks, to see that case. But I also want to just remind the fathers out there, there was a similar case where the child was also not, or the father wasn't granted access, and that mother in Cape Town has to spend weekends in prison now, doing some time there, which was also significant because the rights of children with relation to contact to their parents are acknowledged. I mean, as much as we want to say the rights of fathers are acknowledged, I think our view should be the rights of children.
The rights of the children.
In relation to contact are being acknowledged. And that's what's important in principle.
Definitely. All right. I see that Elroy has said that his mediation is tomorrow and court date is on the 14th of Feb. What is mediation and what can he expect? That's his question.
Well, yeah, we spoke about mediation not too long ago. It was a heated discussion because mediators are, make life-altering decisions in their recommendations. What can be expected? My mediation failed because I questioned the credentials of the mediator. And mediators should be registered with the Department of Social Justice, and we went through what is required of a mediator. So as much as the process is concerned, the mediator also wants to look at getting the divorce settled in relation to who is responsible for what and the outcomes, and then importantly, the rights of the children. Okay, that's what you can expect. Those rights being defined, and discussions around parental responsibilities. That's the important portion, and that's the bit that carries the most weight, because you simply cannot get divorced until you've settled a very important question around the parental responsibilities and access. That's always the sticking point. So you can expect to have that resolved in the process, but I urge you to make very sure of the credentials of the mediator, whether they have been formally trained. I have a lot to say about that, but whether they have a registration with a mediation council and ultimately the Department of Social Justice. The courts have to recognize this mediation. That's important. They have to recognize it. They cannot recognize it if it's just someone who is not registered. Even if they've done 1 million cases, and even if they've had the training 10 times over, if they're not registered with the Department of Social Justice, the other party always has the ability to, on the principle of the mediator not being registered, say they don't accept this outcome. That's
right. Yes.
That's the
Um,
risk.
on that note, mediators will always throw at you in the best interest of the child, and we keep speaking about that. So make sure that you also ask the question, what is in the best interest of the child, and have them explain it to you. I in again in just my opinion, I go with my gut feeling. No one can tell you how to be a father, right? You are a father to that child. You are parent. You got instinct that has been designed to kick in when you become a father. Now, when someone tries to overstep that and tell you how to father, provided that you're not putting your child in danger, obviously, provided that you are meeting the child's needs, because we're not saying that every father is a great father as well. But mediation can be good if done by the right people. That's what Dolph is saying. If done by the right person, trained mediators, experienced, skilled, not 40 hours of training, then yeah, then it could be good for you, right? But always question it. Don't just accept anything. And if something doesn't feel right, yeah, again, just don't accept. Ask questions.
Yeah,
So
just
yeah,
Dominique, I think you can still have a skilled mediator,
yeah, still
and
making
go
the wrong
through
decisions as well.
go through the entire process with a skilled mediator and have the correct outcomes, right?
Right,
Then one of the two parties don't like the outcome, right?
right,
Because some things don't suit them, and something that would suit you today would tomorrow, when the mood changes, not suit you anymore. That often happens, doesn't it? So then they have the ability to contest it on the basis that there's no formal registration of the mediator with the Department of Social Justice, and also with boards associated and linked to the DSJ that's responsible for mediation. So that's the one aspect. You can still have a successful mediation with someone who is skilled at mediating and getting people to talk to one another. But as soon as someone doesn't like the way they got out of bed in the morning and they contest
yeah.
it, contesting it is simple. They just
Or they
say,
don't
no,
like the way you've spoken to them, or you ask too many questions. They
right, you ask too many questions. So
anything could sway
I
them.
have, yeah, so I have two due diligence processes, I suppose is the right word. The one is the formal one, where you look at the registration and the formal appointment as a mediator, um, that's validated and acknowledged by the courts. And the other one is the skill set. Have you done a mediation before? How many people have you helped with this? And then you
And,
discuss it from
and
that point.
let's not forget that because of the sensitivity and the confusion around parental alienation, often these mediation outcomes uh, don't even, well, it's not even recognized that the child is being alienated and the effects of the alienation on the child, right? So that I think that's something important to bring up in mediation. Just going back to Elroy again, in that mediation, ask if it is in the best interest of the child not to have a relationship with you. And I would like to know what that answer is
Look, I want to weigh in there,
and
and
why.
Dominique, you know me.
Yeah,
I'm a process-driven guy.
yeah,
Mediators often aren't psychologists, and that's the problem. Then
right,
that's the first problem. Then mediators often also haven't seen the child, right? They have maybe one session with the child, but they don't use a formal process. They don't use the voice of the child. They don't use a formal psychological process, so they cannot claim to have assessed the child.
right,
So diagnosis around parental alienation, diagnosis around any kind of emotional condition the child may suffer as a result of the way that he or she is treated by one or both parents cannot be made, and you can't ask the mediator to make any kind of statement around that, right? And that's the
right,
problem. So I would only, if you have grave concerns around aspects associated with mediation and the impact of it on your child's behavior, I would urge to have a formal assessment done on that child. You have an opportunity to ask for it, and you
by a
have an
therapist.
opportunity to justify it. And you, unfortunately, may have to end up paying lots of money, like I did, for something like that. But with that assessment, you can then submit that assessment to the Department of Social Justice through the family advocate. You can submit it to your attorney. You can take it to court yourself, like I'm doing, saying, listen, this is what the specialist outcome is. And then importantly, you can make it part of the mediation process. And only then can the mediator address the outcomes of the report in the mediation process in relation to your child's emotional condition. So that's a long-winded answer, but it's process-driven, Dominique, in relation to
Absolutely.
the statement you made. You can't expect a mediator. They'll give you a very straightforward answer, and it's the right answer. I can't judge. I can't diagnose.
What they normally tell you to do is, listen, put your feelings aside, act in the best interest of your child. But then you might come up and say, but this woman's boyfriend is drunk all the time and he swears at my child. Yeah. They'll sweep that under the carpet, and I've experienced something to that effect. It becomes a contest of parents alleging things, and that's what needs to be avoided. If I could go back and do things differently, I wouldn't allege anything. I would bring cold hard evidence, facts here. This is why I feel that my child is in danger. My child should be with me, and the mediator then has to look at that. They can't make the decision at the end of the day, but they have to. If you give reason for investigation, for the child to be assessed, which is very important in some cases. If your child is really in danger, then that's what you should be pushing for your child to be assessed. And that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Look, again, with not one of us being an attorney or a psychologist, we just people that want
from
to
our own
support
experience.
Support other fathers, but have some experience with many fathers or many mothers, parents out there, but mostly fathers who suffer, and you do suffer it. You suffer the effects of it. It puts you into post-traumatic stress disorder. It stresses you out. It depletes your finances. So you suffer this. So Dominique and I have only had lots of experience with other men, talking to men, and also talking to each other, reading psychology reports, and that's really what it stems from. But it's solid.
Study up, educate yourself. Last question here, Dolph. What is the child's constitutional right to have a relationship with a father, his or her father? In this case, we were talking about this 7-year-old girl, and that was the last statement there for the contempt. In addition, Ulrich and Associates secured a punitive cost order against the respondents, the mother and the grandmother, for their contemptuous conduct and their blatant violation of the minor child's constitutional rights to have a relationship with a father. And I just want to quickly speak on that. We're not going to unpack the child's constitutional rights, because I think that it's quite deep and there's quite a lot to cover, right? And we've pretty much run out of time, and that's what we're going to be covering the rest of the week. We are also going to be going through simplified documents explaining the Children's Act, right, that we've discovered. It's a 3-part document, so we're going to go through that together with you guys and then make sense of all of this. We hope if there are mediators, social workers, lawyers watching this, that they'll feel free to join in. We're always open to having professionals on here. We're not professionals, as we keep reminding people, but yes, Dolph, answer that question. What is the child's constitutional rights to have a relationship with the father? In short, in a couple of sentences, if you can.
Dominique, I think If I just read the outcome of that one statement, the Constitution is equal rights for all. That's in
Yeah.
short, right? Equal rights for all. It's unfortunate that children, a 7-year-old girl, does not have her own voice in law, and there are reasons for that, right? But there are also
Right.
tools to get information from them that aligns to what they are trying to tell us. But it's equal rights for all in the Constitution. The child has rights too, and we must never forget that. So, in short, I think that the child has the same rights as you. The child has the right to be looked after by a sensible parent, right? In all cases, that's their right, and you have the right as a parent to parent your child. So I can't answer that. I think we have to get the guy like Charles on to come and discuss this with us, and look at the
Yes.
constitutionality. But if you just look at that one statement, I think earlier in the statement we stuck with, there's a statement in relation to inhumane, and I think that captures it, right? The
Yes.
Constitution, the Constitution envelops or is drawn down from human rights statutes the world over. And we have the most
Right.
advanced constitution in the world, I was told once. So, if the word inhumane is used in the outcome, I can only deduce
Means
that
not human.
a level of human rights have been discussed in the trial. The
Yes.
child being a human and the child's rights aligned to human rights. And our constitution is drawn up with human rights in mind, I would imagine, right? Like all first world constitutions. So I think in principle, the word inhumane conduct goes against the grain of the constitution. And that's the short answer, Dominique.
On that note, we are going to end off. I'm just going to bring up this comment. I missed this one here. Mohammed says that he is living with liver cirrhosis stage 4. And that's terrible on its own to be dealing with. The only advice that I can give to you, Mohammed, is look after your own health first. Accept what is happening to you. You are being alienated from your children, but the added stress is not going to help with your health. Stress is one of the main factors for your health deteriorating. It breaks down your immune system. So focus on fighting that. Get healthy, because even if you do win your children back, you're still gonna have that. And that's, I know that. Sorry, that might be a blatant. I don't know. I'm direct sometimes, but I like to think of things logically and emotionally. And in this case, you're dealing with something already there that needs attention, needs a lot of attention in its own. Dov?
Yeah, look, I just want to add this. Oftentimes, and I don't know whether this is the case, but this is what I was touching on in a comment I made earlier in the discussion, where you have different mediators or alienators, different alienators. Sometimes mediators
Yeah.
tend to err on the alienation side. That's what I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Tongue in cheek. But
That-
you have what's referred to as a naive alienator. And it's alienators that often don't even know their conduct alienates their children. And that's sad,
and they
because
don't
you
know the
have that.
effect of that.
Yeah. And that you're doing it either, in principle.
Right.
Yeah, and that sort of lends on the analogy that you don't know what you don't know. That's a very dangerous place to be. Unfortunately, that danger or that risk impacts a minor child often in this case. So what I wanted to comment on is perhaps the mother knows of the dire condition of the father, and
Yes.
in their view don't want to have the child associated with the father at all because the loss may be imminent. I'm just shooting the breeze here in relation to that. But in fairness, or not in fairness, because it's never fair, because it's about the child in these alienation scenarios. But sometimes people do dumb things, and we've all done our fair share of dumb things or uninformed
Yeah.
things. And I am just saying that maybe the approach should be different. Maybe the approach should be, having a relationship with your child, because I do agree with you, Dominique. You have to put your health first, and these things do impact on your health. The stress does impact on your health, and it won't help, Mohammed. It won't help. But after looking or in looking at yourself and your own health, maybe there's a thought around changing the approach, because the approach may be very different to what you think it is. I think I see he's commenting there. She opens a case trying to kidnap his children. 13 years is the time that he seems to have not had proper contact. I used to drop and pick my children at school. Okay, so he had some contact at some point. Now he doesn't anymore, and he had it and that's what a lot of fathers suffer, Mohammed. You have a condition set for your child, the way you get to see your child, and then suddenly it changes. Suddenly it changes because someone woke up one morning with a different feeling about the scenario, or they have someone new in their lives, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and they decide to do something else. They relocate, they move the children, hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers away sometimes, and everything changes overnight for that child. And I'm really sorry to hear. As Dominique said, get in touch. Let's have it. This is also very much a support group. So get in touch. Let's have a discussion. Let's get your story out there if you want to, if you feel that you can, and be open about it. But get in touch with Dominique,
Dolph,
myself.
what has it done for you to get your story out there? Maybe just share that with Mohammed.
It's a game changer, Dominique. It's a complete game changer. First of all, talking about what you've experienced is important. That's why we go to psychologists and psychiatrists. So
that's why they charge so
much.
much.
Yes, it's a game changer. So getting your story out there, getting the support, I think has been a complete change in the view, and say, well, it validates, it's self-validation, right? You are worth, there's value behind you. And then helping someone else, Dominique, I think is also something that certainly, and it's just being there, being an ear, spending an hour a day speaking to someone else and going, listen, brother, I've got your back. You're not alone.
Right.
And listening to other people's stories, I always use this analogy. You get to a traffic light and you're worried about your situation, and January has 9 weeks in it, and where's the money going to come from next? And then there's this guy who also experiences a long January, but he's someone asking for money at a traffic sign. And you go, well, it could have been worse. That could have been you. So you get that sort of same feeling. You listen to other brothers having similar or worse situations, and you say, listen, I'll be there for you, man. I'm sorry. We had a father on earlier today saying that he's lost, same age as me, man. Lost everything, and he's rebuilding his life slowly but surely, so he can't join us tonight. And to me, that resonates.
But his attitude is still amazing. His attitude is not that one of giving up. His attitude of
because
that is,
he's got a brotherhood.
That's what we formed here. So, guys, again, if you need to tell your story, just type story in the chat, whether you're watching the replay of this or you're watching it live. Type story in the chat. You'll be taken through to the chat bot. You can answer a couple of questions there. Book a date, book a time, come on live, share your story. It might not help you right there and then. It's going to help someone else. And the more we do that, I tell you, once you join the support group, and like Dolph said, once you hear others' stories, you tend to look at your own and say, I can deal with mine. I can deal with this easy.
Right.
Dolph, anything in closing?
No, I just want to again thank the platform for being here. I think once you
Thanks for
start
supporting
engaging,
it. Thanks for making it happen.
sure, absolutely. But just a message out there. Once you start engaging with the platform, with other fathers, once you start supporting the initiative with the view on the interest on the kids, and not a egocentric view.
Yeah. No
Once
revenge.
you start, once you start getting the message, once you start getting your message out there, once you start sharing, that's what it's about. That makes the light, the weight lighter. So I would encourage everyone to engage with the platform, engage with the people on the platform. Let's share the load. Let's listen to each other's stories, and let's be there for one another. Dominic, thank you very much for hosting this.
Pleasure, Doc, and
On
thank
behalf
you
of
for coming on, man. Thanks
Keep
everyone
Well.
for
Thank you.
joining. And yeah, please tune in tomorrow and the rest of the week. We're going to be going deep into the Children's Act of 2005. There are amendments that have been made to the Children's Act that fathers do not know about. And we're going to be talking about those amendments. That's going to be game changers for everyone. So yeah, on that note, thank you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Keep well. God bless.
Bye bye.